So today's workshop is being put on in partnership between HubSpot for Startups, which is a global program, and the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition. The topic is going to be customer acquisition. How do you define, scale, and refine your sales process? And just a little bit of context for folks. The HubSpot for Startups program is a program that, as I said, is run globally. And we provide educational resources and training that are on demand. For example, the HubSpot Academy that you can access at HubSpot.com. We provide tailored programming through partners like the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition. So, for example, the webinar we're going to go through today. And then we also have special pricing through our partnership. So at the end, we're going to be throwing out a discount code that allows you access to all of those free resources and up to 90% off if you're part of the 4M Accelerator. But then also, if you're an attendee or a member of the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition, you also guarantee 30% off at the end. A brief introduction to me and why I'm the one giving this webinar. So my name's Jack. I'm a third-year HubSpotter. I got my start on political campaigns, actually. So my professional career started with organizations that began sometimes with as few as 2 people in a room and needed to scale within weeks to citywide, district-wide, statewide organizations. I was hired by HubSpot actually to come in and help them with an experimental team that was install-based selling only, so only to existing customers. And full disclosure, that experiment did not work out. And so I was absorbed into the wider sales org before I had the opportunity to move back from Boston to the Midwest in May. And now I get to head partnerships in Middle America for the Startups program. And I'm one of those lucky folks who loves their job every single day. So let's go through our agenda for the webinar. And I know that we booked 2 hours for this webinar. I think I can set expectations that we're going to bring it in at about 56 minutes, 60 minutes tops with questions. With such an intimate group, really want to encourage you to turn your camera off or unmute yourself if you feel like you want to interrupt me. No need to just use the chat with a group this small. And one of my pet peeves through COVID is webinars that go long, which I don't understand. So we're going to keep this well within schedule. So we're going to ask you some introduction questions so I know how to kind of gear this webinar, but then we're going to go through the inbound methodology. What is it? Why is it important to sales? How does it shape the way you acquire customers for your business? We're then going to go through the top of your funnel, or as HubSpot calls it, tofu. So we're going to walk through personas. Maybe you've heard about marketing personas. Why should sales care about personas? Why should you create them? And then the middle of your funnel, or MOFU. How do you create that sales process once you have your personas? Whether that's direct to consumer, whether that's B2B. And then once you have that sales process, how do you reduce friction in sales? By aligning and enabling your sales team. And we're going to talk about exactly what that means. And then finally, we're going to touch on the bottom of your funnel. Why is aligning marketing and sales so crucial to how you scale your company? And I know it says Q&A at the end, but like I said, unmute yourselves. Feel free to interrupt me with a group this small. Let's feel free to chime in anytime you have a question. So the first thing I'd love to do is just tell me a little about you. Are you guys in a B2B or B2C business? Whether it's either of those, are you working on an e-commerce play? Can your customers purchase online? And Licio, I'm going to pick on you first, if that's all right. One, will you please correct me if I mispronounced your name? And two, I'd love to know a little bit more about your business. Is Licio on mute? Maybe we'll come back to him. Cam, do you want to go?
Hey, yep, I can go ahead. So nice to meet you. My name is Cam. So the space that I'm in is actually a B2B and B2C facing mobile app. So it'll be on the B2B side, it's tailored towards independent local coffee shops. And then on the B2C side, it is tailored towards their customers. So kind of a mix of both, but we are pre-launch right now and hoping that it will come to life probably hopefully within the next month or so. So we're getting close to the end, but just dotting some I's and crossing some T's to get things buttoned up before we go live.
That's super exciting, Cam. Thanks so much for sharing. And Paul, thanks for putting your question or your answers in the chat. Really appreciate that. Joe, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, with the side hustle I got going on, I would say I'm business to consumer and e-commerce. My 1 to 5, how familiar I am with inbound, I would say maybe a 3. I'll go middle of the road.
Okay.
Sales team is just one. I was working with somebody to help craft some of those customer marketing personas that you mentioned earlier. And I would love to grow that. And I think over the winter, I'm going to be focused on bringing somebody on to help, because I'm really not that person.
That's awesome. All right. Really
You
appreciate
know
the
who you
answers
are,
here.
right?
I was in sales for a long time. That much is true. So let's talk about inbound. Really appreciate the honesty, like the 1 to 3. So inbound as a philosophy at its core is a go-to-market philosophy that embraces the shift in market power from companies to their customers. And this shift in power from companies to customers changes how we market and how we sell. And let's dig into that a little bit more. So more than 50% of buyers will educate themselves before they ever engage with a salesperson. And whether this is B2B or B2C, I think we can all see this as true. If you are owning a business and you're looking for a solution for that business, you're going to do your research. If you're looking for a pair of shoes, you're going to Google it and you're going to actually read some customer reviews. So I think this is pretty self-evident. We've also gotten better as buyers at blocking out interruptive sales techniques. We've all hit unsubscribe. We've all hit spam on our phones and sent those calls away. So we all understand how great consumers have gotten at ignoring interruptive sales techniques. And buyers will actually abandon your brand if purchasing is too difficult. And we have some statistics to back that up. A quick pause before I launch into a few statistics. All of my statistics come from HubSpot's ultimate list of marketing statistics from 2021. It's a publicly facing landing page. I just like to be really transparent about where my facts are coming from if I'm going to start spouting off. So let's think about this. 94% of all consumers will discontinue communication with your brand because of irrelevant or redundant promotions. Three-quarters of all consumers will actually go to an alternative brand if the purchasing process you designed to acquire your customers is too burdensome. And I actually have a brief personal illustration of this. I got back to Milwaukee and I was looking to volunteer with an organization locally, and the Bayview Community Center, unfortunately, their form is like pages long. It is an absolute nightmare. And I quit. I don't know how far through I was, but I quit and I found a different organization to volunteer with. Now, let me ask you all a candid question. Was that a logical decision on my part? No, it was absolutely not logical. It was an emotional decision. It would have taken me less time to simply complete the form, but this is the emotional state of our customers right now. They will abandon our brands just for the illusion of simplicity. But there is a flip side to this coin. 93% of all consumers say they will stick with your brand if they have a positive experience. If the sales process you design delivers a positive experience as you acquire customers, they will come back to you. So at the end of the day, what does inbound mean for sales? Inbound means that we are over the age where the best product wins. It is not just what you sell, it is also how you sell it. And that changes how we go to market. Customer experience is important, in short. So let's start with the top of the funnel. I'm going to start with the first question. Who are the customers you're looking to acquire? What do they look like? And I'd really encourage you to get really detailed with these personas. How old are they? What's their job role? What's their experience and challenges? In short, what is the emotional state of your prospect when they consider buying? And why should you care about the emotional state of your personas? Because you need to know how they want to purchase your product. How are they expecting to buy? And I'm just a big Rihanna fan, so thank you for your patience with the gifts. This is a persona profile checklist. We're not going to go through it point for point. It's going to be included with the slides afterwards that Aaron's going to send out with the recording. This is a great tool to build your first persona, to audit personas that you've already created. And I just want to double down on a couple points here. What does success look like for your persona? What keeps them up at night? What's their emotional state when they're looking to purchase? What are their expectations? So let's walk through a couple examples, and I'd love to hear a few from you guys. So this is probably HubSpot's bread and butter persona, Marketing Michelle. Marketing Michelle is VP of Marketing at 26 to 200 person scale up. Her biggest priority is demand gen for her business, and having a hard ROI, a demonstrable impact on the business that she can hand her CEO in a simple report. She is familiar with inbound, what it is, what HubSpot solves for. And what this means, in all honesty, is that she's probably come across several of HubSpot's competitors, and she's most likely been burned by them. When Marketing Michelle thinks about purchasing HubSpot, she expects an educational sales process that's not salesy. She wants a lot of hand-holding. She actually expects the sales process to not just provide value up front before she purchases, but she expects it to not end after purchase. She expects her sales rep to stick around even after she's paid for HubSpot and for that relationship to continue. Now, this is a high-touch B2B sales process. But as you develop your personas, as your business also evolves, you might discover other personas that you solve for, but who have radically different versions, radically different visions of how they expect to purchase your product or service. And for HubSpot, that's Growth Gary. And my guess is that Growth Gary looks a little like a couple people on this call today. He's head of growth at a less than 25-person startup, gives off power user signals, loves to give reviews to vendors, loves to get feedback. And he sees every problem as a technological challenge. He's interested in getting into tools and working with them. He's willing to pay for them if it's also easy to cancel, just to test them out. Guess what Growth Gary does not want? Growth Gary does not want to talk to a salesperson. Ever, not once. That's just not how he wants to purchase. He wants to get into the tools and test them out. So as you can see, we have two different personas who frankly buy very similar tools for their businesses, but who expect to purchase those tools in very different ways. Growth Gary, very low touch. Marketing Michelle, very high touch. Growth Gary, a little bit more of that touchless, maybe direct to consumer relationship. At least that's what the model looks like. And then Marketing Michelle, obviously more B2B. So I'd love to understand a little bit more about your personas. Is anybody willing to kind of jump in and just kind of talk to me about the personas they've created or started creating?
I'll volunteer.
Go ahead, Joe.
I've got so my company is called Jorts, and I sustainably upcycle old denim, and it's got like a punk vibe, a sustainability thing, of course, and just kind of like a little bit of a raw edge that I like to have fun with. So I have a couple different personas that I've created. There's the punk derby girl, the skater dad, which is like the soccer mom but reimagined, the hipster young professional, and the cool nerd. And I'll just like kind of go off the skater dad just a little bit. But like, you know, I did the whole like demographic thing, the age, you know, he's married, 2 kids under 5. He's got, you know, a beard, some tattoos. I liked to kind of get into the hobbies and interests piece. So like is cool with running, brewing beer, into fishing. He just recently got into smoking meat. I think is one of the things I had. Drives a Subaru, considering getting a hybrid car. But just likes to like hold on to some of his old punk records and thinking that like maybe someday his kids will listen to him too. So yeah, I kind of like started to craft a little bit of this persona for him. I did not go into like how they purchase and all that sort of stuff, but that's a great tip that I should be thinking through a little bit more here.
Okay, that's awesome. And let's just dig one little layer deeper, Joe. Are you thinking that it's more of a direct to consumer sort of, you know, purchase through your website, maybe over Shopify, or is there an educational piece to your sale? And we're not digging for a specific answer here. We're just asking a question.
And it is like a you know, quick Shopify sort of process, but the overall experience itself is very different because I literally get your jeans from you and I hack off the legs and turn them into jorts and jean shorts.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah.
So there's a different type of back and forth there. I'm a fashion brand that has no inventory, so I really have been mulling over a lot about this customer experience and what that takes to turn it into something more special than just wait and try to figure out how to get my jeans into this guy, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah,
do you have a website up and running right now?
I do. Yeah. So here, I'll drop the link in the chat, but it's just jorts.com.
That's awesome.
JOERTS.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Joe. That's really helpful. Paul, do you mind jumping in really quick?
Absolutely. Sorry to, I gotta go quick, but basically, I think the personas that I have are, so I'm creating a, well, I'll just go about the personas. Personas are Twitch streamers who have like 50 to 250 viewers. They are working on their company as like just like their side hustle, right? And but they're consistent people. They possibly or currently have donation tools, and that's how people currently, that's how they currently like make money. But I'm trying to create a channel for them to make NFTs of like their content. And so it's something that they haven't probably looked at or talked about, or are searching for tools or like trying to like buy solutions for that. So I need to do some more work and figure out like how they go about. I'm doing some interviews right now, how they go about like understanding NFTs and how they go about just like trying to get more channels of like income, I guess, pretty much.
That's awesome, Paul. Thank you so much. So a little bit more of an educational sale, trying to dig into how your persona is going to learn. Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks so much. So let's keep moving now that we have sort of those two models already, right? Paul's more in the marketing Michelle category of a more educational sale. Joe's in that more touchless growth Gary purchasing process. So let's begin by just kind of mapping out those process. Now you have your personas. How do you go dig into the middle of your funnel? And we're going to start with growth Gary because it's a little bit more straightforward. So HubSpot has both these models, right? And when we went to map out growth Gary's path, it looks something like this. And the content of each box and line here is not important. What's more important is the emotional takeaway of just seeing this process laid out. At some point, Growth Gary is going to take a look at our process and he's going to cut and run, just like I did with the Bayview Community Center. No offense to anybody who volunteers there. I'm sure it's an amazing organization. My wife actually had the patience to fill out the form. But at some point over that process, Growth Gary will churn, or percentages of Growth Garys will churn. And going through every step to purchase in that touchless purchase process is incredibly important to understanding where that friction is for the personas that you're looking to sell to. So just because it's touchless or a salesperson isn't involved doesn't mean that there aren't friction points as your personas check out. And it's important to understand what those are. And HubSpot was able to reduce that absolute nightmare of a map down to something that looks a lot more streamlined. 22 steps down to 6. Auditing those steps, laying it out, can lead to a much more frictionless, a much smoother purchasing process, even if it's a touchless purchase. So I'd really encourage you to actually go through and dummy purchase your product if it's a touchless purchase. And the goal at the end of it is to leave your personas feeling like it was a really easy, pleasant experience, because as we've seen, that drastically increases the amount, the likelihood that they'll come back to you. Now, the other part of this is cancellations, is returns. And granted, this is going to be different for every business model, so let's not pretend it's a panacea. But the easier we make it for Growth Gary to cancel, to return, to replace, the more likely he is to come back to us.
So Jack, I got a question for you just before we move on to the process thing. So I see the real need to map out interactions, say when you have 100 customers, 200 customers, 500 customers. For very early stage companies who may be searching for customer number 2 or customer number 5 or customer number 10, I feel like it can be really easy for founders to kind of bend over backwards and try to do everything manually, try to do everything as personally as they can. What are some recommendations you have for more early stage organizations who may want to do everything by themselves, very hands-on, very high touch, but may still want to set those expectations even for early customers to their business?
So the question is, if you're an early adopter, sorry, this GIF is getting to me. If you're an early stage company and you are wanting to provide that extra level of customer service, but you also need to set expectations that it might not always be there as your customers grow.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think getting systems in place that are scalable is important. There are technological solutions like HubSpot, or in the e-commerce business, e-commerce space, there's a lot of different point solutions that can make sense. But I also think that when we think about the first customer acquisition, when you think about your early adopters, those are the folks for whom a high touch is actually going to pay off a little bit more if you're gathering feedback from them. So it's okay to set that expectation of early adopters that they have a little bit more access to you, right? Because you're going to get a lot more valuable information from them about what's broken. You know, there's a certain persona that's an early adopter that's willing to go through the friction and figure it out with you. They kind of take pride in it, right? We call them beta users in tech. As long as you are setting up that system to scale, and you're not going to treat every single customer that way, because there is a diminishing rate of returns. And to your point, Aaron, every customer can't have that expectation.
Sure, makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions on that growth Gary low touch model? All right, awesome. Well, then let's move on to Marketing Michelle, because it gets a little bit more complicated once we think about that educational B2B sale. Marketing Michelle's customer journey is a lot more complicated because she's educating herself throughout the entire process. And the sales process we create needs to be peppered into the blog articles she's using to educate herself. It has to consider the types of problems that she's Googling, what kind of content she's downloading. And it even needs to think about what's her onboarding experience. What's most likely to be her first support ticket? So when you create that sales process, there's a secret sauce that there's a couple different iterations of, but the way that HubSpot articulates this is GPCT: goals, plans, challenges, and timeline. So let's just think about this, because as you build out your sales process, these are the things that it needs to deliver. These are the questions that it needs to answer, no matter what the different stages are. Let's talk about goals. Pretty straightforward, right? What's your goals? Of Marketing Michelle's goals, what are her priorities? How does she rank those? And what is she responsible for? Maybe social media is a huge issue, but she has someone on her team who deals with it. And so we need to understand that she's not necessarily directly responsible for it, even though she's in charge of it. Maybe she has another person who handles email marketing, especially like abandoned cart emails, things like that. So understanding responsibilities and priorities is at least as important as understanding goals. How is Marketing Michelle planning on achieving those goals? And this is my favorite one by far. What did she do last year? How have you already tried to solve this problem? Asking an open-ended question like this can give you an enormous amount of ammunition as you go through a sales process. Has she tried a competitor? Were the issues that she ran into, were they internal, were they external? Has she thrown budget at that problem? If so, how much? All of these answers are incredibly valuable to a B2B sales process, and you can get them with one question. How have you tried to solve this before? And in the inbound world, we know for a fact someone has probably at least researched solutions. So challenges. What are your challenges? What are the challenges to adopting a solution? What are the challenges of not adopting the solution you're proposing? What challenges will remain for their business if they do not take advantage of the solution that you're offering? What is the impact to their business, the actual dollar cost? And then finally, timeline. Is there urgency? What's the timeline for purchase? I have sold more things under God than I can possibly name on a single phone call. Been a part of a lot of different sales processes, and I can tell you that urgency is the single most difficult thing to artificially inject into a sales process. If the urgency is not there, it is going to be really difficult to get to the outcome you want, and you should call that out in the sales process. Your sales process should determine timeline as quickly as possible, in all honesty. So GPCT, let's talk about a framework for getting there, right? Prospecting, we've talked about this a little bit already, right? Creating personas. We've also talked about research and discovery, but connecting and qualifying early is incredibly important. And listen, especially for solopreneurs, especially for folks starting out who are incredibly passionate about the solution and the product they're offering, hearing no has a ton of emotional weight to it. But especially early on in your sales process, no is simply the second best answer that you can hear. It means you're not wasting your time. It means you're not wasting your prospects' time and force them to go through a sales process that at the end of the day, no one's going to find valuable. One of the goals of your sales process should be to use those questions in GPCT to disqualify your customer as quickly as possible, whether it's for timeline or other reason. All of these steps, prospecting, qualifying, connecting, research, and discovery, when it comes time to present a solution to marketing Michelle, we should be able to present her story back to her. What is the challenge she's facing? What's the impact of that challenge to her business? Why has she not succeeded in solving that challenge to date? And why is your solution going to be different? And why is it at a reasonable cost compared to the impact to her business? If you can tell a marketing Michelle's story back to her, it will put you in a remarkable position to handle the objections, whether they're from her or her CEO, and to gain commitments and negotiate contracts and to set an actual timeline with next steps for closing. So GPCT is what this process needs to deliver. And by the time you get done qualifying, I'm using the wheel on my mouse like an idiot. Sorry, guys, it's a brand new mouse. By the time you get to the point, get through prospecting, connecting, and qualifying, research and discovery, if you're presenting a solution, it shouldn't be, my name's Jack, I'm from HubSpot, this is what HubSpot can do for you. It should be, marketing Michelle, this is the state of your business. This is the challenge you're looking to solve for. This is the solution HubSpot's going to present. And this is the cost compared to the impact to your business. So there are a couple elements very practically as you build out your sales process. Your deal stages should be factual and inspectable. They should match the way your buyers like to purchase, and they should enable your sales team to educate and not sell, even if it's just a sales team of one. And we're going to walk through what this looks like just really briefly in HubSpot. So this is a HubSpot deals pipeline. You can see it looks like a lot like a Scrum board, if anyone's familiar with that. And you can see, pretty cool. We got the deal stages that are very practical: opportunity identified, exploratory call, decision makers ID, demo delivered, all the way to closed won, closed lost. And at the bottom of each column here is a pretty easy way to see how much revenue opportunity is stuck in each deal stage. Where are deals falling through the cracks? But just as important as this basic breakdown is understanding what a deal needs in order to go from one stage to the other. What are the data points on a deal? What are the pieces of information you need from marketing Michelle to actually move her along your sales process? And that way, when you look at this board, you understand that to move from opportunity identified to exploratory call is not just simply the gut of your salesperson or the fact that you talked to her once. It's that you actually found out key pieces of information that allow your sales process to progress. And without those pieces of information, things are just going to stall. So all that context to your pipeline is important to consider as you're building out the sales process. That's what we mean by inspectable. It's also important that you get really clear analytics on your sales process. And this is just a favorite gift of mine. I honestly don't understand why the NFL has not put a microchip in the ball. We know the technology exists. That's not the debate. Just put a chip in the ball. And listen, analytics are really important on an advanced level. So if we, maybe I should. Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. I got to figure out where the link is here. There it is. So this is an example of well built out analytics on activity, on quota. It's probably a little bit more advanced than some of the businesses on this call are definitely going to need right away. But whether it was selling technology at HubSpot, or honestly in the Green Bay field office, the desk closest to the bathroom, not that anybody remembers, having an analytics, having a simple data point to drive your activity is incredibly important. And honestly, for me, it's always been number of calls, volume of outreach. In a sales role, if I am not feeding that pipeline and searching for opportunity, then I know that I'm not going to be successful at the end of the day. But what reports like this can tell you as you scale that sales process is how your personas are expecting to purchase. If Camille up here is leading activity, but Adam Rubin down here is actually leading in quota, what are they doing differently? What's working and not working? And you're not going to be able to see that unless you're actually tracking. So I'd love to hear about your KPIs if you're tracking them. Do you keep track of phone calls? Do you just keep track of revenue? What are the major KPIs y'all are tracking? Maggie, you just joined us. Do you mind just giving you a brief introduction to your business and let us know if you're tracking any KPIs at all?
Hi, so I'm actually one of the facilitators of 4M, so I don't have a
nice.
business currently, so I'm not tracking anything at the moment.
That's fair. Do you guys track any sort of KPIs as you go through the application process for 4M?
That we do, yes.
Awesome.
So,
do you mind just telling me a little bit about those KPIs and how you track that kind of base level of success?
Yeah, so we track all the different diversity KPIs with demographics. So we're tracking age, we're tracking career stage, we're tracking, just a multitude of things just to see that from the community, what percentage of different stages are we getting involvement in the community?
Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you. So more about the data about the prospect, not necessarily your own activity.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Because it's a small group, I'm going to continue to pick on folks if that's all right. Diane, I really appreciate you joining. If you're comfortable, would you mind just telling us a little bit about your business and if you're tracking KPIs today? We'd love to know about Ambition.
Oh, hi, Jack. Thanks. Well, we have kind of a marketplace for micro internships, and we are tracking. Are we talking about sales in general? Kind of.
Yeah, sales KPIs and sales activity.
I really can't say we're tracking yet because we're barely just starting. I'm still learning the process.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So it's still very early. No, I really appreciate the candor. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I remember from some of my experiences in tech, being at a tech company that was a little bit more mature in terms of sales. A lot of the KPIs we would track, and it's not a direct one-to-one analogy, but kind of goes along with IDEO's sort of model of both broad and deep, right? Kind of T-shaped KPIs to kind of co-opt their model of T-shaped experience, right? So we would track a lot of these activities that went very wide, right? Have they been clicking on things? Have they been answering calls? Have they been opening emails? How much time are they spending on sites? Those sorts of things. But then we would also track essentially the relationship we had with them since the sales cycle was so long. And so we would keep, it wasn't necessarily sentiment analysis kind of in a high volume sense, but we would keep tabs on what are their attitudes towards us? Have they kind of confided in us, several things about, just the challenges they're experiencing, the frustrations they're experiencing, and tracking against that relationship, knowing that, again, because it was so long and because the price tag was so hefty on the other end, the stronger relationships we had, the more opportunity for referral, the more opportunity for feedback, the more opportunity for repeat business.
That's really helpful, Aaron. And we touched on a couple of different KPIs, a couple of different metrics, I should say, in this conversation. So Maggie mentioned tracking data about the folks who are actually applying. Aaron, very much in that same vein. What's their experience as we're going through and setting up our sales process with those early adopters? What's their view towards us? Super important. We're going to touch on that in a little bit. And then obviously also thinking about activity and what goes into driving that funnel and that pipeline. Thanks a lot for sharing, everybody, and letting me pick on you, especially Diana. Thank you very much. Diane. So let's think about aligning. Let's think about the bottom of your funnel, reducing friction and scaling by aligning and enabling your sales team. So implementing a frictionless selling framework. So when you think about improving your process, we've touched on a bunch of these points, right? Analyzing your current process, mapping out your customer's journey, defining the exit criteria for each stage in your pipeline, and then measuring the results, making sure that you're collecting data on each stage as well as on quota. So let's talk about what it actually means to enable and align your sales team. When we say enablement, what does it mean in this context? Enabling your sales team means allowing your sales team to focus on selling. When we think about especially an early stage company, a lot of that outreach can be blind. It's siloed work. You're not necessarily talking to one another. You're using a bunch of tools with manual data entry, but also you probably have a bunch of leads on a spreadsheet, and it's pretty difficult to prioritize where you should be spending your time as a salesperson. How do you set up a sales process that informs your outreach, that allows your team, as small as it might be, to collaborate, and then also allows you to qualify leads so that you're spending your time where it will be most impactful? And as someone who's worked a lot with startups, I can tell you that culturally speaking, the things that they have devalued the most is their own time. And if you can actually value your own time and set up a system that allows you to focus where you're going to have the most impact, I guarantee you're going to be a little bit happier, a little bit saner, and you're actually going to be a little happier with the result as well. So this is an example of how HubSpot, from an early point in our existence, helped salespeople prioritize their outreach. And this is a simple notification email that's set up when anybody who was a prospect of mine entered the pricing page. I was able to call within 5 minutes. Well, I should say, if I was able to call within 5 minutes of someone being on the pricing page, I never actually had a negative experience. And let's unpack that a little bit, because it sounds creepy, right? Like, I just get this notification, I just call someone up right away. But think about it from the prospect's perspective. You're sitting there in the middle of what is probably going to be a busy day, and you're on the HubSpot pricing page, and your phone rings, and it's Jack from HubSpot saying, "Hey, I got a notification you were on the pricing page. Is there anything I can help you with just in terms of your package? Do you want to talk through it quickly?" That is a lot more positive than if I go away from the pricing page, I go about my day, in 4 hours, some salesperson calls me and says, "Hey, do you want to keep talking about HubSpot?" No, I've literally moved on with my day. I was there before. Statistics show that you will be more successful the sooner you reach out after someone indicates a purchasing decision might be soon. And that includes, those statistics, by the way, are still valid for things like abandoned cart emails. If someone goes to your website and puts products in their cart and then abandons it, you're going to be much more likely to get them to purchase if you send an abandoned cart email sooner rather than later. Now, full disclosure, obviously every notification is going to be different to each business, and not all notifications are created equal. I also got one of these emails anytime someone filled out the free email signature generator on the HubSpot website. And I sent all of those directly to spam. Because nobody in their right minds, has ever paid $40,000 a year for software because they filled out an email signature generator. It was great for marketing to hit their QL goals, but it was really bad for sales because it was just simply not a valid notification. So that will be iterative. You'll find good ones and bad ones. Important to, as I said, collect the data and keep iterating. So a couple redundant points here, but when you think about enabling your sales reps obviously scrutinize your sales process and tools. Take a look at your sales team's day. And if this is your day personally, I would really encourage you to take a hard look and find places to automate. I've definitely fallen into places as a salesperson where I have not treated my own time with respect, and it's made my days incredibly long. I've had to go back and figure out why I'm not producing as much as I thought I would. Time to complete tasks is crucial. How much time are you spending tapping out an email? How much time are you spending on sales calls? How much time are you spending scheduling meetings? Make sure you're holding yourself accountable to an efficient day. And then time spent connecting with customers and quota attainment. Obviously, quota attainment at the end all is the end all be all of sales metrics. Does anybody here have notifications set up? It sounded like Diane was really early. Maybe not as relevant to Maggie. Joe, do you have any notifications set up for when someone checks out on your website?
I don't. No. I just check regular, numbers and analytics.
Okay, that's fair. So you probably know like how many folks are dropping off with an abandoned cart, but not necessarily how long the purchasing process takes them.
Yes, correct. That is correct.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? As an individual trying to run your team, you can only get so granular before you have to get back to what you got to do.
Yeah,
makes sense.
I feel this is a really tough one to do proactively, right? I feel like kind of tools that we have at our disposal are very good at notifying us when action is taken, but not necessarily the best when action is not being taken, right? So it's interesting to hear that there's kind of a step of visibility and transparency that can happen to sort of enable that action versus only after the fact, right? Kind of thinking about the tools that we have. I'm thinking through the notifications we get, and so many of them are this has been completed or this has been finished, not that someone is stuck pre-finishing or pre-completion.
That's a really, really good point, Aaron. And this is really where the technological tools you use can become exponentially more valuable to your business, frankly, as you scale out, right? It might not be right away, but as you scale that sales process, the predictive nature of technology can actually clue your sales team into an opportunity before someone has clicked, yes, I want to buy. And that's obviously different across businesses, but the predictive nature of those tools and that tracking is a really good point. So thanks for raising it. Any other questions on the enablement side of things? Okay, seeing a lot of notes, so that's totally cool. Let's talk about what it means to align your sales team now that we've talked about enablement. And the word that I really like here is ruthlessly. Sales can be painful. Let's just call that out. It is an emotional experience, and you got to be ruthless with yourself at times about how you realign and double down on what's working and acknowledge what's not. So when we think about aligning with your buyer, used to be 9 to 5 availability, 7 emails to schedule every meeting, sometimes hostile negotiations with upfront commitments and a rigid sales process, right? And in an inbound world, none of that works anymore. You have to have educational content ready on demand. You have to be interacting with your customers 24/7, and there are technological tools to help you do that. Simple meeting experience. This one is actually a lot more controversial than I initially realized it would be. Some people really don't like meetings links. And without getting into that debate, meetings links versus not, I'd like to encourage everyone to think as in both and, not an either or. I have definitely had people who prefer just send me back a time. I've also had people who really appreciated the professional nature of a meetings link that let them book directly on my calendar. And so you don't have to choose one lane. You can definitely do both. Depends on how you want to interact with your customer. Transparent pricing. This is a huge one, especially in the B2B world. Most of HubSpot's competitors, whether we're talking about Salesforce, Oracle, Marketo, all of them are incredibly powerful tools. None of them have transparent pricing. There's no way you get a ballpark figure without talking to a sales rep. And this is a huge benefit to HubSpot. We have a transparent pricing page. We can get you a number that sets your expectations. And boy, it makes a sales rep's life a little bit easier when the expectations are already set. And I would really encourage you to think about transparent pricing if it's not something that's fallen on your radar yet. Easy to buy, easy to cancel. We mentioned this a little bit earlier. It's obviously going to be different depending on your business model. But the easier you make it to walk away, the more professional and pleasant that experience is, even when someone cancels, the more likely they are to come back to you, is the moral of that story. Now, I said something a little bit earlier, 24/7 sales process, and that stressed me out just saying it. I know that everybody cannot be simply 24/7 available to their customers, and frankly, no one wants that lifestyle. But there are tools like chat that can help you enable your prospects to qualify and disqualify themselves without ever talking to a sales rep. Now, considering the size of the teams here, I want to make it really clear that I'm talking about chat bots, not live chat. I've handled live chat for a small organization. It was an absolute nightmare. I spent a fortune on Tylenol. It was such a headache. But chat bots are only getting more sophisticated, and the number of consumers using chat is only growing. And if you look at this chat really briefly, just learn about more products, learn about pricing, get educational content. This is your prospect having a positive experience, telling you what they want. You can set up the bot to respond with more information on products or just general educational content. And if they click learn about pricing, now your sales team, or just you, knows the difference between the prospect who came for educational content and the prospect who's actually considering a purchasing decision. So chatbots can be a really sophisticated way to help your prospects qualify and disqualify one another. At the end of the day, the important thing is to take ownership over the customer experience and make it a priority and constantly course correct. Once again, right, one of those themes where we're constantly coming back and seeing what's working and what's not. Key metrics for aligning. Is your buying process aligned with your customer? How long does it take them to close? How long does it take from them expressing an interest in purchasing to actually closing on a product or a service? What is your customer satisfaction? Out of curiosity, is anybody gathering satisfaction or feedback surveys on, for example, cohort participants or Shoppers Joe? Is anybody collecting those types of surveys?
Oh yeah, I try to get information from all my buyers, but also through Forum, we do the Net Promoter Score sort of stuff.
That's awesome. So Aaron, that's part of the curriculum at Forum is the Net Promoter Score.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like sometimes people kind of confuse just general satisfaction for what an actual Net Promoter Score is. Do you want to just give a quick definition of that? Because I have it in my brain, but I'm curious if everyone knows exactly what that metric is, because that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So, and tell me if you disagree here, but customer satisfaction is basically a binary yes or no. Did you have a good experience? Did you not? A Net Promoter Score is how likely are they to recommend your product or service to someone else. And it's usually a scale of 1 to 10. And a key metric that we use at HubSpot is we want to get our Net Promoter Score up above 7, up above 8. And if you can get your Net Promoter Score there, it's usually considered really successful, and a good indication that someone's going to recommend your product or service. That's awesome that everyone seems to be gathering this information already, so I won't harp on about it. Just good on you guys for doing it.
Well, and I also think there's something really valuable about collecting data that kind of falls into these different categories, right? The individuals you can kind of consider to be your champions, the ones who are at a 9 or a 10, like absolutely, heck yes, I'm going to refer this to as many people as I can. Kind of your passives of like, yeah, it was all right, but nothing to really write home about. But then also your detractors, you know, if you're going to be collecting that binary, did you have a good experience or no? It can be a really valuable thing to learn that you have some detractors and sort of learn more about them, of why that experience was less than valuable for them.
Man. And, you know, let's dig into that just a little bit more. So when you have detractors, I mean, this workshop's all about trying to spot friction in your sales process. What better way to spot that friction than to ask those people who've dropped out or had a negative experience? Where was that negative experience in your process? At the same time, when you think about the 9s and 10s, if your product has upsell, cross-sell opportunity, you want to know who those people are who are building trust with you. Because if they trust you for one product and service, they are the warmest leads for the next product and service. But expanding an existing customer relationship is hands down by orders of magnitude less expensive than trying to build a customer relationship from scratch. Thanks for pointing that out, Aaron. So let's talk about scale, the importance of sales and marketing aligning as you scale. And let's just call out that we've talked about a bunch of marketing techniques while actually talking about your sales process. We've talked about notifications on your website. We've talked about chat. We've mentioned abandoned cart email and other email marketing. And really what we want to get to is an alignment between sales and marketing for this gap between when someone's a lead and someone's a customer. And if you're wondering if HubSpot started as a marketing company, smarketing should pretty much give us away. Only a marketing company would come up with that term. But it's really about spotting that gap and understanding what marketing efforts best nurture a lead to be handed off to sales, and what sales activities actually result in closed won MRR. Sorry, we're using MRR as if it's a tech company, but closed won revenue. And as we go through these goals, like marketing pipeline should be tied to sales quotas, compensation based on shared marketing and sales goals, there is a gentleman named Mark Roberge, who is now a full-time professor at, I don't know why, Robert, I must have hit caps lock, so my apologies, but the spelling's correct on that. Mark Roberge is a full-time professor at Harvard Business School who actually scaled HubSpot's sales team. And he has a 45-minute talk online. You can find it on YouTube about what it means to actually tie sales and marketing quotas together. And I'd really encourage you to watch it. As someone who's heard a lot of sales speak in my time in sales, this is actually like very real stuff that's incredibly helpful. And this guy did it. So Mark Roberge, I just put his name in the chat. The important thing when you're scaling is to be able to tie all these points together, because having them siloed is an incredibly dangerous thing to a scaling business, because it means you're not spotting friction. You're not spotting what's working and not working. And closed loop reporting from marketing to sales is really important. Let's just walk through a little bit about what that looks like in HubSpot. So this is a campaign report in HubSpot. If I scroll down, you can see all the different marketing efforts, we call them marketing assets, that have been tagged into this report. blog posts on the website, calls to action, emails, social posts. We can bring ads in as well, traffic analytics, all into a report that says, yes, we know how many sessions. We know how many contacts were created from those sessions. That's important. But more important, I would argue, is all of these influenced contacts. Who's coming back and actually engaging with your marketing material over and over again, continuing to be nurtured? And what's the difference between those folks who close deals and those who don't? What's the actual ROI? I'm sure we've all heard that age-old phrase, I'm wasting half my marketing budget, I just don't know which half. In an age where so much of our marketing is digital, there is really no excuse to not know what's working and what's not, what's actually resulting in closed won revenue. And this gap between influenced contacts and those who actually close the revenue, that's where the activity report actually helps you close that loop between leads that stay leads or go cold and leads that actually close. Oh, came out of printed mode for a second. And now I'm just clicking randomly. All right, we talked about sales activity reports. At the end of the day, let's just take a step back and realize that sales, whether it's creating a sales process or walking through it with a prospect, is an emotional process. Decisions are made for emotional reasons. They're not made for purely intellectual reasons. And that's why it's so important to gather data. Especially as a solopreneur, especially as someone who's invested in your business, be easy on yourselves. Sales is not always fun. In fact, more than 50% of the time, you're going to hear the word no. So gather that data. And at the end of the day, give yourself a North Star to run towards, to understand what's working and what's not.